It's a camera that's ran on solar power. It operates off a cell phone signal, so it's independent, but it takes still images of the rear end of a vehicle. And so what you capture is the license plate or the lack thereof, and then the make, model of the vehicle. Of course, it doesn't have facial recognition software. It's not set up for stoplights or stop signs. It doesn't track your speed. It doesn't have the capability to even tell you how fast a vehicle's going. So it's not for any of that. It's simply lack of a better term, a license plate reader. And so it stores that data. So one camera with 4 hours of south-facing sun will get about 72,000 reads before the battery would die and would need to be recharged. And it sends that data off to a secured server where people who have training and access to the system can access it and do a search for those plates. So with the cameras that would be included in the county and the cities, we also have the ability to access other networks from nearby agencies who may have those cameras, as well as across the nation where those cameras exist. I think Flock right now has somewhere between like 20 and 25,000 cameras across the nation.
Wow. And then that data stays for only 30 days.
Right, so it's a hard delete after 30 days. That's what the company does. So in the instance that, law enforcement runs a search in relation to a case, or the humanitarian efforts to find somebody, or there was an abduction or something, they could download that information as a part of their search query and put it in their case file. But the company itself doesn't store that information beyond 30 days. Yeah, so, a big part of it is not just about tracking criminal activity and doing investigations. Part of it is also serves a prosecutorial goal. It helps increase our success in prosecution of people that we know are bad. For instance, if we can identify somebody at a scene of, let's say, a shooting, we could also go back after the fact, after, even now already that person had been identified, and do a search and say, okay, well, their vehicle was obviously in that area during that time. That helps increase our ability to prosecute. There's also obviously another method and means to use these camera systems. I'll give you an example. We've had an elderly person who had Alzheimer's or dementia who was supposed to be at church at a certain time, and he never showed up. So knowing his license plate, we're able to plug that into the system and get a general location of where he had recently had been, and of course they were able to locate that person. Another example out of Perry, we had I think 13 or 14-year-old girl who was taken by a 35-year-old man, and he started traveling north, presumably to go to the Atlanta area for human trafficking, sex trafficking, something like that. Law enforcement were able to get a plate number. They plugged that in the system and put out what they call a hot list, which is basically kind of like a BOLO, be on the lookout. And the person was picked up in Henry County, where law enforcement spotted the tag using their Flock system and was able to conduct a traffic stop, take him into custody, and send the girl back home to Perry safely. So it's not just about tracking where people are going. That's not what it is. I mean, it's not nobody's sitting at a computer watching live streams of photos coming in, right? There has to be a purpose for the search. It has to be associated with a particular case, and those search results obviously have to be vetted by a law enforcement person. Of course, like I said, it's a secure system, so it's not like you can just share something to Facebook and go in there and people can look at it. And there's also training that's required in order to be able to access the system. And so the propensity of things like that being abused, it's just like anything else. I mean, you could abuse a ballpoint pen if you really wanted to and write bad things about somebody. And of course, it's always exists, and of course those people will be handled accordingly, either by the policies and procedures of their agency or by me as a prosecutor. But we don't expect any of that to happen. We've had access to the Flock system for a number of months now without issue. And of course, there's always this idea that it's Big Brother, right? We got camera systems that exist. It's interesting that people often think that like the cameras that are on the intersections in Watson Boulevard actually serve some kind of law enforcement purpose. But really, they're not cameras. What they are is they sense the number of vehicles that are in a particular lane so they can operate the traffic devices that are there, the signaling devices. They have no capability of taking video footage, right? But these are cameras in the sense they take a still photograph. They don't take video. They won't, the chances of them being able to see inside the car are, almost none. So really, we're just looking at the rear end of a vehicle where the plate is displayed. And of course, the plates in the state of Georgia are owned by the state of Georgia, so you don't really have a legal right to hide your tag so to speak. And if you're operating a vehicle on public roadways, it would work the same. So yeah, I think, if there's obviously several good reasons to have these cameras. One is obviously for criminal investigations, another for, to increase our ability for identification and things like that for, prosecution, but also there's a humanitarian effort that has, we have found to be very helpful in locating people